to a different topic in the same panel about contemporary refugee policies in comparative perspective. Avinoam Cohen is completing now his PhD at Tel Aviv University Faculty of Law. He is also teaching in the law faculty at the College of Management, and is also a manager or a director of a legal clinic regarding and evolving about immigration policy litigation. Please. Thank you very much.
7-minute warning, so I'll so give me the 7 so I'll know when to start speeding up. Okay. Okay, thank you very much also for the organizers for the invitation. Orly, these are your men immigrants. I did not foresee that comment, but I was thinking when I put up the image that this is what we don't know what country they are from, or are they convention refugees? But we know that they are young men. So this is the first preliminary comment, and the second is that as opposed to the two previous speakers that I think that are looking for solutions in the law, I will try to suggest that the law is part of the problem, and at least that the refugee system is not only a legal and moral system, but first and foremost a political system, and the legal system is part of that political system, and perhaps the gap is a gap that needs political legitimation, but not necessarily legal solution. So what I will do in the time that I have is shortly to first point out, to flag a few of the my opening points, and then put up a few numbers on the board to visualize and maybe conceptualize how a refugee crisis is perceived, and then I will try to say a few words about how to conceptualize the question of what are legal challenges in the context of refugee policies. So the first, put it out. So first 3 points is that first, again, is that refugee protection is part of a migration policy, and refugee protection is a safety valve. I put it out. It's a safety valve in a context where there are closed borders and enhanced immigration control. So the refugee policies are an extension or an aspect of immigration policies. They're the human face of the closed border world regime. The second is that, as I open with, it's first and foremost, the act of granting asylum is a political act, and the category is a political category. First and foremost, that it can be juggled, undermined, substituted for, relabeled to achieve first and foremost political ends, and it is about numbers and reducing unwelcome immigration, especially on the south-north movement. But at the same time, law, especially in developed democracies, does have some suasion. So it can pressure and can yield pressure, and that can yield constraints that sometimes constrain policy choices, although they can usually be overcome if there's enough political will. And two maybe last points, and the first is that about migration crisis, and I think it was discussed also in the panels that I unfortunately missed this morning, is that the crisis is first and foremost is a crisis in the South. These are this is from the UNHCR Global Trends Report from 2015, published earlier this week. Europe is here, Europe is the other, right? Europe and all the rest. The majority of the refugees remain in the South, and this is the point of the refugee system, and that is to keep refugees at bay. The aim of political response in refugee-generating situation, be there geopolitical conflict or economic conflict is to keep refugees close to where they are, either in the country, IDPs, and that is why the UNHCR mandate is extended, not officially, but is supported by, funded by states in order to facilitate that the Syrians will either not pass the border or remain around Syria. And as you can see, and these are figures from 2015, and the most updated that I am familiar with, they remain in the south. So this is the goal of the international refugee political system as I see it. And it is also facilitated by extending UNHCR mandate to support IDPs by development assistance. I don't know if it was discussed in the early panel, the agreements of Europe with sub-Saharan countries, the Cotonou agreement that followed the decolonization of Africa and part of the Caribbean countries, etc., etc. So, and the problem of the developed north is that once people are in, it is very difficult to push them out. And it's not only a problem of the north. As you can see here, it's also a problem of Turkey and Lebanon. The Palestinian refugees were mentioned. It's once people migrate, usually the stronger from the cohorts of potential refugees, it is difficult to push them out. And it's particularly difficult for democracies that have conflict of the liberal imperative of inclusion and the imperative of keeping the borders of the community and only letting in those that the community wants to let in. And if we look at the European immigration policies, they are increasingly selective and they're directed to the people that can contribute to European growth, not to receiving large cohorts of immigrants from low-income countries, be them in or not in conflict. So that is the point of departure. And in this context, to say a few words about a comparative perspective. I think that what we increasingly see across the north, and here across a developing north, and here I would include Japan, Korea, and Australia, and New Zealand, and that is that there is policies, there's a convergence of policies, and countries will not necessarily fare better if they have ethos of being more inclusive or less exclusive. For those familiar with Roger Brubaker's study of comparative policies of citizenship in France and Germany, it's not that Germany is doing less than France, is doing worse than France because Germany does not have universal citizenship, and it's not that Israel is doing worse than many European countries in the context of integration. Integration of refugees is mostly determined at the local level by municipalities, by contribution of NGOs. The policies at the national level we are seeing great convergence. To give a bit of a context, I'll skip this. Right. Go back to this in a moment. So if we look at the largest intakers of refugees in Europe, and these are first quarter 2016 figures from Eurostat, what we see is that countries differ. And they differ in the way that they give protection, and they differ in the rate of rejection or intaking, but they do not differ in who they take in or who they reject. Right? So Syrians will will have the most chances of being received and not being rejected, refouled. Albanians, Kosovarians, Serbians, Afghans, Iraqis, most chances are that they will be rejected. So here's I would say the first point about the way that countries manage their refugee policies is that it is not about individual asylum. Right? So the system that was built on dispersing the problem of the post-World War II to people that were recognized refugees is that people are determined by their country, and it's group protection. Everywhere it is group protection. And it's not, people are determined by what country. So the question is, what country are you from? And that is why a quarter of the Iraqis and 40% of the Moroccans are trying to pass as Syrians. Right? And the way that Ethiopians try to pass as Eritreans in Israel. Once you prove you're Eritrean, you'll receive temporary protection. And that is how it is basically everywhere. And it works. If we compare the first quarter of 2016 with the numbers of the second quarter of 2015, we see that Europe managed to increase the number of Syrians and limit the number of Kosovarians, for instance. Right? So what Europe tried to do is say, if you're a Kosovarian, you have a little chance of receiving asylum. So this is the way that the system is working. It signals to people, do you or do you not have a chance of entering? Israel is doing basically the same thing with Sudanese, Eritreans, and African origin infiltrators dubbed in Israel, or asylum seekers. Right? I'm saying infiltrators because this is part of the way that it is constructed. Right? So they're immigrants from Africa are constructed as infiltrators under the anti-infiltration law that was originally meant to fend back Palestinians trying to return after the 1948 war. And it is now capturing African refugees, dubbing them infiltrators, not until very, very recently, not even examining the refugee requests, not giving them asylum. Right. But if you see the numbers, look at the numbers of Sudanese and Eritreans requesting asylum. These are the latest figures that I have and that I know that are published from last year. No one is granted asylum. But also, almost no one is being involuntary return. What Israel is trying to do is to force people to voluntary return. Right? So that is the missing segment from that. That's the third durable solution that you mentioned. Voluntary return everywhere is declining. And the UNHCR report from early this week, you see that if there is something that is stable, is a decline in the rate of of repatriation everywhere. So that is the missing link. And from here I can move to speak briskly only about what are legal challenges. So if what states are trying to do is to intake the minimum number of people that they want to intake, and the law is constructed to support that, how do we think of legal challenges? A legal challenge for state, and I think in many ways I already said that, the legal challenge for states is, on the one hand, to keep a veneer of the rule of law, to keep the idea that there is humanitarian protection, and in Europe also to keep the communal values, which are both economically and politically symbolic of free movement within the European Union, and fend off as many unwanted immigrants and refugees as Europe can. So the legal challenge for countries is how to choose a right to protect the right refugees. What countries are doing is trying to match it by category by citizenship and not by individual persecution. That is out of the context. And the second thing is to engage in agreements, and all countries are engaging in more or less secretive return agreements. Europe has it across along all its borders, and they are challenged. They are challenged in Greek administrative courts are now challenged also in the European Court of Justice. So the challenge for the state is to keep the standard. And the second thing that Europe is doing, and I will not go into detail because I want to say a few more words about different challenges, is to be more formal about keeping a line across all the countries within Europe. That is, to preserve a common European asylum system, and Europe is moving in that direction. Actually, surprisingly, and it is working better than it has for a long time. And I want to speak of two other challenges in 3 minutes. The first is one of the legal challenges for refugees and for those representing them. So the challenge for the refugees and those representing them is, I would say two. The one is to persuade that they are refugees and that they need protection. And part of the problem is that how do you do that if all the people that are moving through the Balkan routes are people that need protection? So how do you carve out this category of need without undermining all the rest? And what many NGOs and advocacy groups are doing is taking the very bare universal minimum of argument. So this is, for instance, why in Israel we see groups challenging the anti-infiltration law about detention, but not challenging refugee policies themselves. So the problem is that it is, if you're going to the universality and the rights that are protected are so minimalistic, you catch a very thin level of protection, and sometimes the victories, like in the context of detention in Israel, are backfiring. So that is, I think, so the challenge is how to preserve the only category with which you can impose your presence on a sovereign state that does not want it, without relinquishing the perhaps right cause of all the rest. And it's a very difficult challenge that I think that many NGOs and advocacy groups are not meeting. And the second challenge for people that are thinking of how to solve protracted refugee situations, and I think that is that, can the law accommodate under par solutions that are negotiated politically? And part of the problem, I think, in this respect, right, I'll be even shorter, is that when there were refugee situations that were resolved, like in South America, or around the boat people crisis in the 70s and the 80s, it was usually through political negotiations that were at least partly under par, and that they included all three elements of durable solutions. I think the best example is of Cambodian refugees, right? And if we take all these elements out, and if we cannot negotiate politically, also with people themselves, and if the lawyers are sticking to the strict lines of protection, it is very difficult to carve out legal solutions that will meet all the different interests and legal challenges of all involved. Thank you.